Today's conversation is food nutrition and intuitive eating, implementing the principles into your life. And we're really grateful that Lisa Nolting has come on this session and giving us her knowledge and expertise as a registered dietitian with Student Wellness. So we're really excited that Lisa can be with us today. Just real quickly, our computer guidelines, as always, when you join, you should have been muted. So we ask that you stay muted during this time unless Lisa asks you to come off mute to talk. Video is always optional, but we'd love to see you. Please turn off the notifications on your computer. If you have any questions, type them in the chat, and we will end at 3 o'clock. So this, again, is just a time for us to share information about well-being within our community. If you have any questions, comments, please put them in the chat, and we will get to them as we go through. Just a real quick plug for a couple upcoming events. Family Friday webinar this Friday, The Science of Parenting, Balancing Research and Reality with Positive Discipline. It's going to be a great session at 10 o'clock on Friday. If you want more information and to register for that, if you go to our ISU Wellbeing homepage and check out the live events, there's a link to that for you there. And then also next week, we have Sasha, who is with Student Counseling Services. There's a new online resource for all ISU employees. It was brought on for students, but it is being now going to be paired with employees. It's called TAO, Therapy Assisted Online. So we will be doing that next Wednesday at this time. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen so that Lisa can share her screen. And welcome everyone, and thank you again, Lisa, for being here and for joining us today.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. Can you see my PowerPoint? It's nothing fancy, so don't get too excited about that part. But so, like Sue said, I am the student wellness dietitian at Iowa State, and I work primarily with students doing a lot of different things. Our office on campus is focused on health promotion and prevention, so we do a lot of things kind of in the public health realm. We have Pure Wellness Educator program that I help to coordinate, and then I do a lot of one-on-one nutrition counseling with students. I coordinate the campus eating disorder treatment team. Where we've created and are working on some online programs so that students can take some of our outreach things that we typically do in person, so they can do them virtually this fall. So yeah, that's a little bit about my job. And then we do have something called Culinary Boot Camp, and that's really a group collaboration between employee well-being, student wellness, the Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition, ISU Dining, all sorts of people. We come together and do a 4-week boot camp, and this fall it will be available for employees, and it will be virtual because that's kind of our reality, I think, for this next academic year, maybe. So anyways, just have to put a little plug in for that program. I know more information will be coming out about that when the school year gets closer. So anyways, thank you again for having me today. Both Callan and I, as Callan referenced last week, you know, kind of the philosophy that we use with food and nutrition is a health at every size, weight neutral approach. So whenever we're working, whether it's individually with a student or just in the education that we do, things like this, we're always talking about intuitive eating and health at every size. We're not promoting weight loss as the end goal for every single person, and weight neutral just means exactly how it sounds, weight neutral. So in particular today, I'm going to talk more about really incorporating the principles of intuitive eating into your life, kind of like practical ways to incorporate it. And I first want to just reference a couple of books. So this is the Intuitive Eating book. There's actually a newer version has recently been released, and I don't have that yet, but this is a fairly, oh, sounds like my volume is a little soft. Let's see. I'm gonna pull my mic closer to see if that helps. Okay, hopefully that helps. You're getting an up close and personal view of my face. I apologize for that. Anyways, so the intuitive eating book is kind of the foundation for a lot of the intuitive eating work and the education that both Callan and I use on a daily basis. And then there's also this workbook is actually what I recommend more than the actual book itself, because the workbook, it's literally a workbook. So you actually do the work. There's a lot of prompts and exercises within it. And so it's a great way to like practice what you are learning about with intuitive eating, and a lot of reflection exercises and things like that. Lastly, this is not specific to intuitive eating, but it goes along with just in general a health at every size, weight neutral philosophy. And this is for parents with particularly young children, but it's called Secrets of Feeding a Healthy Family. And the focus of this is really on building a good, healthy relationship with food and body image with your children. So those are just a couple of references I wanted to make sure to point out. So this slide has all 10 principles of intuitive eating on it. And like this workbook, the image that I have off to the side here, the authors of the book and the kind of the pioneers in this field really recommend that you work through all these principles in order, because the first thing you really do need to do is reject the diet mentality. And that diet mentality is really this idea that whatever the case might be, like, oh, we shouldn't eat sugar, or we shouldn't have refined carbohydrates, or we need to make sure that we're eating a high protein diet. Like anything like that is really what we consider to be the diet mentality. The next principle is honor your hunger. And so that means honoring both, not just like what sounds good to eat, but also like what is your body telling you that it needs in this moment. So that might mean that you're craving, a salad, legitimately craving a salad. There's a difference between like, that really sounds good today versus like, oh, I should eat that because I had pizza for lunch. So that's kind of what honor your hunger means. Make peace with food. So that's really when I'm working with clients, I encourage like more of a neutral, like food is not good or bad, it's just food. Of course, there is food that has maybe better nutritional value overall, but even something like French fries has some nutritional value, but more importantly, it might be that perfect side dish that makes your burger taste so great, That's really what making peace with food means, just having a neutral, normal, healthy relationship with food. Challenge the food police. So the food police is that voice in your head that tells you you shouldn't have something. And that voice often comes from, well, it might be your voice. It could also be the voice of maybe you were as a child bigger than your friends, and your mom was really conscious of that and didn't want you to be bullied in school, and so perhaps she restricted your food intake, or would say things like, are you sure you really want that other cookie? Like that food police voice can come from a lot of different places. Feel your fullness means understanding what your physical and emotional cues of fullness are. So the physical cues of fullness are really, kind of self-explanatory, but sometimes we are out of touch with those cues. In particular, when we're doing things like watching TV while we're eating, or on our phones while we're eating, it can be hard to like truly feel when we are full because we're distracted while we're eating. So feeling your fullness really means getting in tune with those. Discover the satisfaction factor. So satisfaction is different than feeling full, because satisfaction is when you may physically be full from dinner, but you're still craving something sweet, or there's just something, that feeling of like, well, I don't maybe think I should still be hungry, but I really still want something sweet. Well, I feel guilty for eating dessert, so I'm going to go get a bowl of cereal instead. And then you eat 3 bowls of cereal and you still are craving something sweet, because cereal is not going to be the thing that probably satisfies your craving for, let's say, chocolate. So that's what the satisfaction factor means. Cope with your emotions with kindness. So that just means understanding your emotions, being able to label your emotions as what they are, and understanding how that might affect your, not just your food intake. And, sometimes emotional eating might occur, but it really means being compassionate with yourself in general, because we know that our relationship with food and our bodies is not, it's not just about food or our body. There's a lot of things intertwined with that. Our emotional well-being plays into it, and social situations that we might be in. All of those things can affect our emotions, but also how we feel with food in our bodies. Respect your body. This is a big one and a really important one. And basically, if you think about how you take care of your body on a daily basis, are you treating it with kindness, or are you saying negative things about what you see in the mirror, or comparing yourself to other people, other people in the similar stage of life? Well, she maybe looks like this, so why don't I look like that? Or I haven't even had kids yet, so why do I, feel this way about, there's a million different things that, a million different thoughts that might be rolling around in our head. But respecting your body really means listening to what it needs, both physically and mentally, emotionally, all of those things. Movement, feel the difference. So we, both Callan and I often will use the word movement instead of exercise. There's nothing wrong with the word exercise. It's just through our experience working and with clients and doing nutrition counseling, exercise for a lot of people has a really negative connotation. It can mean things like having to do jumping jacks and jump rope and run the mile, and who had to run the mile in elementary school and middle school. And I think most of us probably had to. And that for most people, that's not a fun experience. If you're, in 5th grade and you have to run a mile and you're not prepared for it. So I think the word exercise can bring up a lot of different emotions. But with movement, the key is really just finding something that you look forward to doing while moving your body. So that might mean taking your dog for a walk, that short walk before work and after work. That is movement. Going for a walk on your lunch break, or maybe you genuinely enjoy higher intensity types of activities. And if you're looking forward to it, then it's beneficial. If it's something you dread doing, you're not going to look forward to it. And the health benefits of physical activity are, there's so many health benefits, both physical and mental, emotional health benefits of just moving our bodies, that it is important to move and find something that you enjoy at the same time. And then honor your health with gentle nutrition. So that it means that the reason it's the very last principle of intuitive eating is because it is you really can't get there until you've worked through these other principles. So until you reject the diet mentality, until you learn to feel your fullness, respect your body, you can't really start to discern between different types of food and fueling for nutrition and health. And, we call it like play food, or food that you enjoy that may not have a lot of nutritional value. getting to that point, you do need to work on these other areas. And I should also note, kind of really, if you think of this almost as a pyramid, where the very top of this would be like an inverted pyramid. So honor your health with gentle nutrition is actually at the very top of the pyramid. And as you work your way down, these are more the base levels. And actually, this is not included in the intuitive eating workbook, but actually having safe, reliable access to food is foundational, to not just health, but also relationship with food and nutrition. If someone has struggled at any point in their life with access to food, safe food, reliable food, it's going there. It will require some work, and oftentimes, both Callan and I know have seen students on campus that we've worked with who've experienced food insecurity, during childhood, or even maybe there was enough food, but parents didn't, cook or provide food. So, someone may have just been kind of scrounging around for food, trying to put things together, and that can definitely impact someone's relationship with food and their body as they go through life. So that was kind of an overview of the principles. Does anyone have any questions about any of those individual principles of intuitive eating?
And if you don't want to unmute yourself, be sure to just put them in the chat and we can see those. So.
And if anyone has any questions as we're going through this, I would say just put them in the chat and we can go through those in the last 5 or 10 minutes. So basically this next slide is just like, how do you incorporate these principles into real life? So I think, in the work that I do with college students, when they're in my office, or as is the case now, we're meeting virtually, what we talk about during our nutrition counseling session, they might be like, really, yes, I can do this. I'm gonna start tracking. We have a hunger and fullness scale. Excuse me, my throat is super dry. That's why I have tea, because I'm trying to keep it from getting too scratchy. But we do have a hunger and fullness scale on the student wellness website. There is a handout available somewhere there. I can send a link to Sue, but maybe we're working through something and we're at the point where we're working through the hunger and fullness scale, and they're starting to use that and check in with that, like once a day, for example. They may be like, well, I don't even know, if I'm not feeding myself regularly, if I'm not making time for, let's say, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I'm just kind of barely getting enough food during the day because I'm so busy, and then I get home from class at 5 o'clock and I'm absolutely starving, and I just grab anything that I can because I'm so hungry. Like, how do I really learn to feel my fullness? And so some of that comes back to having some structure within your day. And one resource I would recommend for getting some flexible structure in your day around food, if you don't already have it, would be the resources from Spend Smart, Eat Smart, which is through ISU Extension. And it's a really great website. They have an app that you can download, and they have meal planning worksheets. They have a budget calculator. And those things can be really helpful, particularly if you're struggling with, I've had a lot of people tell me, not college students, but like coworkers and family and friends, that during this crazy time of coronavirus and working from home, maybe having little kids while working from home, there's just been it's felt chaotic, and like there's not a lot of sense of structure when there's not the typical like leave for work or go to daycare or school. And so one thing that you can do is establish, like, okay, we're going to eat breakfast by 8 a.m. every day, and we're going to aim for lunch around noon to 1, and dinner between 5 and 6. And knowing that that's a flexible schedule. It's not set in stone, but having some structure in there is going to help you in terms of meal planning, but also it's going to help your body to know when to expect food. It's going to help you to develop those hunger and fullness cues. It helps regulate your hormones, like leptin and ghrelin are hormones that regulate appetite and satiety. So that would be another place that, another resource that I would recommend in conjunction with intuitive eating. So sometimes when people hear intuitive eating, they think it's like free for all, honor your hunger, just need to eat whatever you want whenever you want. And it's like, well, you're still paying attention to your body and how you feel. And sometimes that means, well, I'm not hungry for breakfast, but I know that I am going to be presenting at this conference from 9 a.m. to noon. And so I'm not hungry right now at 8 a.m., but I'm going to eat breakfast because I shouldn't go until noon without eating, or I'm going to be very hungry. Your brain likes to function on glucose. So if you, for example, if you don't have enough carbohydrates, your brain is not going to be functioning its best. You're going to probably feel foggy, and things like that. So that's where kind of that consistency and structure with food in conjunction with eating intuitively is kind of that sweet spot of having both some structure and routine, but also the flexibility that comes with intuitive eating. Let's see. So it's 2:50. Trying to think, what would be the best? Do people have questions about getting this, like implementing this in their life, or other food and nutrition questions? I can follow up on some of the questions we didn't get a chance to answer last week.
So Lisa, there's one that came in today, and it's, should one eat 3 meals a day, or is it okay to consider multiple small meals? And then I know Callan emailed me that she has the questions from last week as well, so.
Perfect. So I will go ahead and answer that question, and then I'll start going through the questions from last week. If anyone else has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So in terms of eating 3 meals a day versus eating like several smaller meals throughout the day, I think it really depends on the person. It depends on your schedule. It depends on also like your lifestyle. You know, if it's just you at home, if you have other people who are living with you, if you're, you know, in a job where you're like on the go and you can't take breaks to eat. And so I have a friend, for example, who's a vet tech, and she's on her feet on the go, like for 12-hour shifts. And she's like, we literally don't have time to eat lunch. Like it's just not something that we have time to do, but we have time to eat snacks. So like she, for example, packs like snacks that are like basically mini meals. So things that have fat, protein, and carbohydrate. So then every time she's eating, she's getting some of each macronutrient. So it's really going to depend on you, and also, you know, what stage of life you're in. For example, pregnant women often can't stomach big meals. They need smaller meals throughout the day. It also can help sometimes with blood sugar control, if someone is diabetic or just has gestational diabetes. And so it really kind of depends on the person. And what I would recommend is actually doing a journal, like a food journal, not to be counting calories, but just to be paying attention to like, okay, so I had this for breakfast, and I had this for lunch and this for dinner. Here's how I felt after each meal. And then, okay, so I'm going to try today having 6 small meals. How did I feel? What was my energy level like? You know, a lot of times people tell me they get sleepy in the middle of the afternoon, kind of that afternoon slump. Some of that is just, I think, the way it is, but then some of it also can be what you've eaten at lunch. Making sure you're getting enough protein and fat at lunch, for example, I think is really important, because if you're not getting enough protein and fat at lunch, you're not going to stay satisfied, for one thing, but then also you might have a burst of energy from carbohydrates for 1 to 2 hours. And then if you don't have enough fat and protein to kind of even out that energy, that can cause kind of that afternoon slump. And I would also suggest, if you can get outside in the afternoon to get that sunshine, that really helps wake you up, as well as moving your body helps to wake you up as well. Okay, I'm going to start looking at these questions.
Lisa, this is Stephanie. I just threw it in the chat. A lot of times when we share things like the intuitive eating and kind of letting go of the restrictions, we hear from a lot of people that they try, but they start to gain weight and that makes them really nervous and they'll quit. Can you speak to that a little bit, especially right now while people are kind of isolated at home and on their own, and how do they ease into this a little bit and address the weight issue?
So, weight is a very complicated, challenging issue, especially because we're constantly bombarded by messages of how we should look, both on social media, online, TV, websites, all of the above. And so, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that we live in a system, in an environment, in a culture that puts a lot of value in thinness or looking a certain way. And so there is that, and we do need to acknowledge that we can't necessarily change that culture. We can advocate for it to be changed, but that is there. The other thing would be, if you have not been feeding yourself enough food and you start eating intuitively, it's very normal to gain weight because your body is like, thank goodness, I'm finally being fed the amount of food that I need. And if you are respecting your body and taking care of yourself, getting plenty of sleep, moving on a regular basis, listening to your hunger and fullness cues, eventually your weight will find the place that it's meant to be. It may not match up with what society thinks you should look like, but your body knows best. And it can be really challenging and frustrating when that doesn't line up with what you may perceive as your ideal body or your ideal shape, size, weight. And there's some really great books that Callan and I can't like share on our websites because the books maybe have some swear words in them, but there's some pretty good, like, funny books about kind of helping to kind of go back against what we call diet culture, and kind of embracing the body that you've been given, and knowing that whatever, as long as you are taking care of yourself, and again, that doesn't just mean eating healthy and exercising, it also means getting good sleep, finding time for social interaction, even if it's just virtual right now. Doing all of those things, your body is going to find the weight that it's meant to be at. But it is scary if someone starts to gain weight, and we're in this society that really discourages weight gain.
Lisa, the book you're talking about, can you put that in a reference list, or are you not allowed to do that as well?
I will email Sue with links of that, and we'll kind of let you take it.
I'm pretty sure I know which one you're talking about. That's why I was asking, but we'll see what we can do to help get that one out as well.
Any other questions? Otherwise, here, I'll go to my. Okay, so here are questions. Can you see these questions? Oh, someone just asked in the chat about intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting is it is a diet because it's, you know, it's restricting food to a certain length of time. There are certain different forms of intermittent fasting. You know, one of them is like a 12-hour fast, and one of them is, you know, like you eat all your food within 8 hours, you know, during the day. There's different things out there. I always just tell people you're fasting every night when you sleep. And if you know, let's say you eat a snack at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night and you don't eat breakfast the next day until 8 a.m., that's, you know, what, an 11-hour fast. And it's not really a purposeful fast. It's just kind of, that's how your meal pattern works. There is some data that shows it might be beneficial for type 2 diabetes, but I don't think there's enough out there yet to say this is an effective way to manage diabetes. So, and again, paying attention to how you feel when you do it as well. People are going to do things, you know, it's very normal, natural to want to try things. People have reported, you know, like, oh, my head feels clear. I feel more focused when I do intermittent fasting. And so I think it's one of those effects that might be for the first few days or the first few weeks that you're doing it. It might feel really great, but like anything else, like any other specific form of weight loss, and if it's not sustainable, it's not going to last. And we know that 95% of weight loss diets fail. And so intermittent fasting would fall within that. But if there are health benefits associated with it, I think we'll probably start to see just more research done on intermittent fasting that might provide some more clear guidance.